You're tuning in to part 2 of this conversation. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, I encourage you to pause and start there first. Let's jump back in. Welcome to Unspoken Lives, the podcast that uncovers the powerful, untold stories of everyday people. The real stories you don't always hear, but ones that deserve to be told. I'm your host, Kelsey Billingsley. In each episode, we'll explore journeys of growth, resilience, and transformation. Conversations with guests who have faced challenges, embraced change, and discovered new purpose along the way. Through their stories, you'll find inspiration, hope, and a reminder that every life has a story worth telling. Let's dive into this next unspoken life. If you don't mind sharing, what were some of the moments through that whole process that were probably the heaviest moments for you?
I think if you talk to any parent of a kid who has special needs, you're grieving the life that you thought you were going to live and adjusting. And that's the hardest part, is that in your mind, you have this idea of what life is going to look like. And this is really for anyone who goes through any tragic experience, right? It's not just reserved for us, but you have an idea of what your life is going to look like. And I think it's that grieving process. A family that loves to travel. And so that was something we're like, oh, I don't think we're ever going to be able to travel again. Or just doing those simple things, which is like even getting to the park was difficult. So it was going outside, going to the park, where those were even difficult tasks because you had to pack oxygen tanks. You had to prepare for every scenario. You had to make sure you had the right medication. So those everyday things that you take for granted are gone. And then you also don't know what your future is going to look like. We live in a 3-story townhouse, and we were like, this is not going to be foreseeable. As he grows and gets bigger, like we're not going to be able to stay here. This doesn't make sense. And so I think that those moments were probably the hardest, which is planning for a future that you didn't expect, grieving the future that you thought you were going to have, and learning what that's going to look like, stepping out into that new frontier.
Yeah. I know faith is really big for you. Can you share about some of the moments where, you just relied heavily on your faith and that played a big part?
Yes, it was everything to me. I think every believer, if you're going to do the Christian walk correctly, you have to expect some suffering, and there's going to be some hardships. And it's the only way that the Lord is going to be able to refine you and to mold you into the work that he has for you. It's the best thing that can happen for you. And it's really, really difficult. But I remember there's a lot of people who would ask me during this time, like, how do you know that the Lord is still good? How can you worship a God that would allow this for you, but more importantly, would allow your son to go through something like this? The thought that kept coming to my mind was the fact that we're always so comfortable with everyone else's pain. It's everyone else's pain, especially as a believer, you're deeply comfortable with, right? Like the first thing you say to someone who's going through something that's hard is, God's here. He loves you. He has a plan for you. That's how you comfort any of your friends who's a fellow believer and they're going through something hard. And then yet, so many of us, when the pain comes directly to us, our first thought is, God's not good. I can't believe he will allow me to go through this. And so I had that running thing going through my head, which is like, why would I ever be comfortable with someone else's pain and not my own? Why would I trust that the Lord has a plan for their pain? And then when the pain comes to my front door, dare to question him on it. And anytime that you're in scripture, the running theme through scripture is pain. And then how is God going to rectify it? How is he going to use it for his glory and also for our own? And I think that it was that theme that kept me going, which is God promised me I was going to have pain. And he also promised me that he was going to be here in the midst of it. He absolutely was and still is. And just the simple grace of like being in a hospital room, not having any sleep. And in those moments being like, you're going to get me through this. I don't know how. I feel like I'm losing my mind, but I know that you're going to get me through this. And then waking up the next morning and being like, okay, I'm here. He got me through it. Now let's just take the next step,
right,
and watch him show up again.
So you said the going theme is pain, getting you through it, and then how will he use it? How do you feel like God has used this pain in your life?
I think that pain is a microphone. I think people are far more apt to listen to people who have gone through something that's really hard than they would someone who hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been, or I've tried to be fairly vocal about my faith. And there's a clear difference between my faith before Tommy and then my faith after Tommy, and just people's willingness to hear me out on who the Lord is. And I think that there is a little bit of a like, okay, I'm willing to listen now because I've watched you walk through something that's really difficult and you're still in it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can hear you and what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's a really beautiful gift. And that's kind of the point, right? Like that's the point of pain, is that people take you a little bit more seriously when you're talking about the Lord or, spiritual matters.
Right. What would you say to someone right now just going through grief, whatever that looks like in their story? What would you say to them?
Well, that's a good question. Let me think about this one. I think the main thing when you're going through grief and tragedy is that you need to have grace for yourself, and you need to have grace for everyone around you, because everyone is doing their best. There's a lot of dumb things that people say to you in the midst,
I'm sure,
of your pain. And yet it is just the best thing that they could come up with in the moment. And I think having grace for you and for others, how you're going to respond, is the kindest thing you can do in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Grieving parents are some of the scariest people you'll ever have to be around. Not because they're going to be irrational, but because it's, what do you say?
Yeah.
And to anyone who's going through tragedy, it's not just the death of a child, although that is one of the more major things you can go through. But, if you have a horrible cancer diagnosis, what do you say to that person in that moment? And so I think it was anyone who said anything at all, even if it sounded silly or what they said to me was probably not what they should have said, I took it at face value for like, this is the best that they could give me in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated it. And I wanted to meet them with love and understanding, just as I needed to meet myself with love and understanding, for as patient as I needed to be with myself. And so I think that that's the main thing if you're going through grief right now, is kindness and love towards the people that are around you, because no one can sit in your shoes. It's very hard to understand what you're walking through.
I remember when you and I talked before this, you mentioned something about how sometimes, after Tommy passed, sometimes people are nervous to bring it up or talk about him, but that you want to talk about him. Like he's your son, you love talking about him, and that sometimes people are scared. So maybe what would your advice be to the people not going through the grief, but the people, the friends or the family members watching them? What would your advice be to them?
We love talking about Tommy. And if we don't talk about Tommy, it's typically because we want to make other people feel comfortable. I think everyone has this idea that we're going to, anytime that we bring him up, we're going to burst into tears and be, inconsolable. And what do you do for someone in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not true. We love speaking about him. He brought so much joy to our life. As much as it was hard and difficult, there are a lot of funny moments too in the midst of it, that moments that we'll still bring up and we can laugh about today. And I think if you deeply love someone, you want to talk about them, whoever that person may be, whether they're alive or they've passed. I think people think that like we've sort of forgotten about him, and then they're afraid to bring him up because it's going to like trigger something and we're going to remember. And that's the silliest thing, which is like, we're always thinking
you're never going to forget.
You can't like jog our memory and be like, oh yeah, that's right, we did have a son, we forgot about that. Yeah, I think the gift that you could give a grieving parent is talking about their kid. I think the hardest thing is that we don't get to talk about him enough to make other people feel comfortable. And then in not talking about him with other people, it makes us feel like he's been forgotten or that we don't get to talk about him. And that's just like the biggest tragedy for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to ask you, because now you have beautiful girls. I was looking at your social media. I don't think I realized this, and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want, but you went through another loss before you had Alexandria. Is that right?
I did.
Do you want to share about that?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm happy to. Yeah. Tommy passed away in March of 2023. And then in August, a day before his birthday, we found out that I was pregnant. And it was really incredible. And we were so excited. And then we were in Hawaii, actually, when we found out. And so it was just like this really serendipitous moment and felt very full circle for us. We were so excited. And then we came back from Hawaii and we scheduled our first doctor's appointment. And then we found out that the baby wasn't growing. And I suffered a miscarriage.
I'm so sorry.
In October. That was really difficult for us. So yeah, I did suffer a miscarriage after.
What a rough year for you guys to go through. I can't imagine that. I feel like something like miscarriage, like there are some losses that people are going through that are almost unseen, and people are just living this, through this pain or this hurt, this heartbreak, and nobody else knows. So I'm curious what you would say to, another mom going through that right now who's, having this loss. But besides her family, I'm sure other people around them aren't aware.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm such an open book. I'll talk about anything and everything. I know that's not everyone's MO, so I try to be really careful about that. More, other people are so much more private than I am. But yeah, miscarriage is a huge thing where I think, how many of us and our friends have had a miscarriage? It's so common. And then we also had obviously the added pain of having just lost a child and then having a miscarriage, and the combination of that. And also just
that's a lot
feeling of, as a woman personally, I know I didn't, and I know I didn't cause Tommy's death, but it did sort of feel like all my body could produce was death. Like that is how I felt in that moment of like, I just can't produce a healthy child.
Yeah.
And that was a really scary thought to me. It's funny because I had accepted Tommy's death well enough, I think, in what I was going through. And it was really difficult after the miscarriage because having then now lost 2 babies, there's this thought of like, what if we can never have another one? And what if this just isn't, like, do I need to start grieving the process of not being able to have another baby? And this is kind of the end of the line. I need to just be grateful for our oldest daughter. And that was really difficult. I think I went through more of a depression after the miscarriage than I even did after Tommy. I think probably because Tommy every day was a gift. Every day wasn't promised to us. So every day that we got with him, it was like we felt it was a relief. So when he did finally pass away, we knew it was probably coming. But then, the loss of this new life is just kind of like the nail in the coffin of maybe I can't produce healthy kids. And maybe this is kind of the end of the line for us. So that was really difficult.
And you said that you went through more of like a depression moment. So how does your faith show up in those dark moments?
I remember calling my mom. I went to the beach and I remember calling my mom and I was like, okay, I'm in a hole. I don't know how I'm getting out of this one. I cannot see the light at the ends. And this time it feels really, really heavy. And it wasn't anything that she said to me, but I hung up. And I think just saying it out loud, there was some relief of like, okay, now someone knows that like, I'm not questioning my faith by any means, but this one's going to be a little bit tough for me to navigate. And then a few months later, we were able to get pregnant again. And then we had our daughter.
Yeah. Who you've told me looks just like Tommy.
Looks just like him. Yes. Big blue eyes, blonde hair. Both my husband and I are, have dark hair and like brown eyes. And so we gave birth to these 2 blonde, blue-eyed babies. And it was so funny. So opposite. Our oldest daughter too is deep brown eyes. And what a gift. So cool that she looks just like her brother. I think it's really neat too that she's a girl. And so there's not going to be so much comparativeness. So she gets to look just like him, but she's a girl and will be absolutely her own person. But it's such a sweet reminder of his life.
I've always known you were a strong person, but to go through the loss you've experienced is just crazy. I can't even fathom what you went through. When you were going through it every day and then having to go through loss and then just a few months later, another loss. It's incredible to see how strong your faith is, and just, I can tell you're emotional speaking about it, but you, like, looking at you right now, you still have joy on your face somehow. I don't understand it. And it's even though it's horrible loss, like, it's still beautiful story. And I know that God will use it. And hopefully somebody listening, this gives them encouragement to get through, maybe it's the toughest time of their life, or even just a depression for something else. So
Right.
just thank you for one, sharing with me, but even aside from that, just being willing to share your story at all. It's such a hard story to listen. And I know you like sharing it, but it's hard. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for asking about him. I mean, again, we love any opportunity that we get to talk about him. We try to take the opportunity to do so. And also any opportunity I get to talk about the Lord's goodness, I jump at, because at the end of the day, it's the most important thing about me is my faith. And it's the thing that I lean on the most. So if I get to speak about it or speak about the Lord, like, that brings me so much joy. So yeah, it's a real privilege.
Yeah. Well, and your daughters get to see it. They see you guys as an example, which is pretty cool. So.
Absolutely.
Well, is there anything else you want to share about your journey or your faith, or any closing thoughts?
Yeah. I've had a lot of women, just like you said, say to me, I've heard this a lot, which is, obviously, I can't imagine what you've gone through, but I've pictured it in my own life. And I'm not sure that I would have the grace that you had to get through it. And I think for anyone who is sort of planning ahead or planning for worst case scenario, I think that's where anxiety comes from, which is we're always trying to plan for worst case scenario. What would we do in this case, in that case? And the reason why the Lord says be anxious for nothing isn't because you're not going to have pain. It's going to happen. It's promised to us. But it's because we can't anticipate how the Lord's going to show up for us in that moment. You can't store up grace for the day that the tragedy happens. Grace is only given to you in the moment. And if I've learned anything throughout this whole thing, it's that he absolutely meets you there. Yeah. He doesn't abandon you. And oftentimes you get the most clearest picture of the Lord is through the pain, because the pain is the thing that kind of burns away everything else. And so, will pain happen to us? Yes. Will the tragedies come into our life? Yes. But will he be there? Yes. But it's something that you're going to have to trust and not store up faith, because you'll be given it in the moment.
Yeah. That's great advice. I'll need to re-listen to that. Just play it every morning.
That's right. I mean, I still have to tell myself. Before we had our miscarriage, or after we had our miscarriage, actually, it was Nick who said that to me, which is like, just because you've gone through one hard thing doesn't make you exempt from the next hard thing. And I had to remind myself of that, which is, is he here? Yes. Is he going to show up for me today in the midst of this new pain, this new tragedy? Yes. And did he? Absolutely. And so with each one, we think that God is sort of running out of grace, or he's running out of peace for us. And he never does. With each subsequent hardship, he remains the same.
Yeah.
So
I meant to ask you, with Nick, was that hard on your relationship at all going through this?
I'm really fortunate to be married to the kindest, happiest person that I know. His optimism was truly admirable. He took on so much of it as well. So we, I think you divide and conquer. So whatever your skill set is, you just lean into that. And his skill set was keeping us optimistic no matter what. And then he also was incredible with, he took on ordering all of the medication, making sure that we had all of the tools. So getting the oxygen here weekly, getting the old oxygen tanks out, making sure that we had all of our medical supplies. He's so good at organizing. He's such an organizer. And so it was in that moment that I realized that I had married the right person. I mean, I always knew that.
I know what you mean.
But his strengths came out so clearly in that. And we would talk to doctors and nurses who were like, you have no idea how fortunate you are that you get to be married to him. She was like, most of the men in the situation fall apart. And it's actually the men that take on they're the most depressed. And we typically see the women rise up.
Yeah.
And that was just I mean, I felt like I was fairly optimistic as well, but he was incredible during that process, and just took it on head on, was there for his son. There's nowhere else he'd rather be. I remember we were talking about all of the things that we were probably going to miss out on, which was like his family has a home in Italy. So it was like future trips to Italy. Like that wasn't going to be a thing for us anymore. And just like, it's hard to get out for a date night. And he said the most profound thing, which is like, yeah, but what else would we be doing? Like, this is, what else should we be doing? Like, this is the most important work that we could ever do, which is laying down our life for our son and taking care of him. And I was like, you're right. Like, this is it. This is the work. Vacations, like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is he trumps everything else. And we feel fortunate to be his parents.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. Well, you guys are a real testament and a strong couple. It's, even though I wish you hadn't gone through that, it's amazing to see how you guys are and came through it.
In a funny way too, I think it's been a gift because it's these things kind of, they expose you and all of your faults very quickly. And so to have had this so early in our marriage, it was such a gift to us because we know who each other, like we know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been at the deepest, darkest spot together.
Exactly. So then to be able to walk through the rest of our marriage, having had this moment of deep exposure of who we are at our core, it's been really cool, I think, for us. And just our friendship too. Just on like, are we friends? And it's really been a huge testament to that.
Yeah, I could see that. That's amazing. Well, I just want to thank you. Again, like I said earlier, I know this was such a hard time, but, this podcast is about unspoken lives. So basically, there's people walking around with stories, whether it's, heartbreak or other things that you just would never know unless you talk about it. And I love that you're so willing to be open and talk about it. I think it just creates better relationships and brings more humanity to everyone. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. I hope so. I hope that's what we can bring to the table.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey.
That's it for this episode of Unspoken Lives. If today's story moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect on your own journey, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next powerful conversation. I'm always on the lookout for new guests. If you know someone with a story that deserves to be shared, I'd love to hear from you. Check the show notes for contact details and make sure to follow along on social media at Unspoken Lives Podcast. Until next time, keep listening, keep sharing, and remember, every life has a story worth telling.